Okay, apparently we should be live from the looks of things. To everyone that's here today, thank you very much. This is my second show, and I have a little bit of a lost voice thing going on today, and therefore, if I sound a little scratchy, that's why. To those of you who have shared on Twitter, I really, really appreciate it, and look forward to having some more of that. Thank you, Evie, for the props as well. I like seeing those little hand things, or those little feels, as they used to call them. Okay, so we'll discuss tonight some of the different types of online harassment, as well as the slight differentiation between cyberbullying and cyberstalking. For those of you that are here, if you want to at some point join on the show itself and be shown, we're certainly welcome to have you with. Right now I do have the seat blocked because someone just kept asking, even though I kept denying. So I think it's someone that's new to Blab and not quite sure how to work it. So right now I blocked it, or locked the seat rather, just in an attempt to not distract myself too much. If you have questions throughout the show, type in, I believe it's the / and the letter Q. Hopefully it shows it to you on your dashboard, and that will pop those questions over to a separate area for me, for those of you who are newer to Blab. And I think I can officially get started. Okay, so real quick, in the chat box on the side before, Web Evie had mentioned that she was looking on the blog that I have, which I'll show that, or I'll share rather, that link in the chat box. And she was reading some of the comments that Crazy Pants has left for me over the course of however long. And for those of you who are not familiar with my story, I refer to the woman who's cyber stalking me by Crazy Pants. It's just a little bit of a way for me to add a little bit of an emotional buffer and not feel, I don't know, I guess is emotionally tied to her. That's just one teeny little thing, and by no means does it take away the emotional distress that I've experienced in dealing with her. But that's just kind of what I call her. So if you hear me refer to CP, as Web Evie put in the box, in the message box, or Crazy Pants, that's why and where that comes from. So anyway, back to the blog. I have been very on the fence with if I should allow her comments to be approved or to just ignore them altogether. And the main reason at this time that I've chosen to allow the comments to stay live is because if her family possibly would happen across the site, I don't know that they ever would, but if they would happen across the site, they would see the stuff that she's leaving, maybe a reporter, maybe law enforcement. So basically, I've just decided that I'm going to let her Crazy Pants comments wave high in the air. I do go through and I do redact out any information that is personally identifying. So like the name of my attorney, names of others that she's harassed in the past, and she loves to add their names in, which anyone who thinks about this in any detail, or detail is probably not the right word, anyone who thinks about this for even 30 seconds would come to the conclusion that these different personas that she adopts, she really likes this Jill and Kyle Logan quite a bit, but she's used tons of different names. And if you just read through the different comments on the blog, if you have nothing better to do and you want something to make you pull your hair out with her poor use of grammar and spelling, if you have a high tolerance for that, there's definitely some entertainment value in those comments. And if you think about it for 30 seconds or 45 seconds even, you'll think, wow, how is it that someone who allegedly has no connection to this woman possibly know such incredibly specific details? Because as far as the public knows. Most people do not know the details that are so specific to my situation. I, of course, know the details. The guy who inadvertently brought her into my life, and I talk a little bit about him and how she found me in last week's episode, and you can watch the replay if you'd like. And then my attorney even doesn't even know like so many of these very, very specific things. And yet these quote unquote personas that allegedly have absolutely nothing to do with her, these people supposedly like know all these like incredibly identifying pieces of information. So it's just another way for me to allow this information to be in the public, because she's essentially putting it in the public. And there is obviously the other side of the coin is like just ignoring her, not letting them be posted, and then maybe she doesn't get a thrill off of the comments that she leaves. Honestly, I don't really care. For me, it's more beneficial to just let them show than it is to hide them. So now that I've gotten that little bit out of the way with regards to her comments on the blog, tonight's actual discussion is going to be a little bit on some of the different types of online harassment. And by no means is the list that I'm going to go over going to be entirely inclusive of everything that's out there, but it does hopefully help people realize that there's so many different facets to online harassment, and hopefully for parents that have children that they'd like to protect, to help them see like, well, it may not just be this type, like these are the different things that can happen. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. In no particular order, we have mobs. Mobs a lot of times tend to start off on places such as like Reddit, blog comments. There's some CD websites. I want to say 3Chang might be one of them. I'm probably totally saying that wrong. And basically what happens with mobs is mobs basically feed off of each other. And so things just escalate and continue escalating. And pretty soon it's just people just running around. Well, not running around, but like hiding behind their keyboard and essentially ganging up on people. Probably a good visual would be like villagers with their pitchforks and fiery torches and stuff going to like burn someone's house down. So like in a sense, that's what the mob mentality is they're just all, that negative energy is just all feeding off of each other. We of course have revenge porn, and there are a lot of states that are a lot stricter with their laws in regards to revenge porn in particular, because a lot of times the people who are participating in harming individuals through the use of sexually explicit photos, sometimes they're also crossing the line. Well, they're crossing the line regardless by actually posting that type of stuff, but they're giving identifying information, names, addresses, phone numbers, where the people work. There was a story, I want to say maybe 2 years ago on Jezebel, where a woman helped her daughter in California with one of the biggest like revenge porn site owners out there. And the last I think I read up on it, I think he finally got arrested, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to look at that in a little bit more detail. But I'm pretty sure that particular website owner got like taken down or at least got put in jail. So the revenge porn, obviously, because there's a lot of like society things that like come into play, like when it comes to like sexuality, that can be even more embarrassing and harmful than some of the other types of online harassment. But by no means does that diminish the emotional impact of any of the other types of online harassment. Of course, we have doxing as well, in which personally identifying information is revealed online. Obviously ties into the revenge porn as well, and can tie into like the mob mentality stuff that I mentioned at the start. Doxing involves, revealing names, addresses, phone numbers, social security, all those pieces of our lives that are just part of who we are, and we don't necessarily want out in like the huge world without our permission. It's one thing for us to share that information on our own, but if someone publishes that information with the intent of harming us, like the impact can be really like stressful. Swatting, the first time I ever actually heard of swatting was from watching the SVU episode that was kind of like an offshoot of the Gamergate situation the other year. But basically it's pretending, like calling in a threat to law enforcement and having law enforcement show up at the victim's house. Could be calls made to law enforcement stating that someone is going to commit a murder or commit some other type of crime. Of course, law enforcement reacts really fast and they possibly come in with guns drawn and everything. And the poor person who this attack was perpetrated against is sleeping or watching a movie. But whatever they're doing, they're not in the process of committing a crime. So there's the swatting then as well. And then there's just like, there's hate speech that's typically targeted towards specific types of religious, ethnic groups, sexual orientation, just anything that someone else doesn't necessarily agree with or they find to be not what they believe that a lifestyle should involve. So there's that. I don't know if that one has a term other than hate speech. And then there is also just like the cyber stalking, cyberbullying, and identity theft as well. I guess could probably fall in the thing of like online harassment, identity theft. Not sure if that's like quote unquote like legal thing with the identity theft falling under the cyber stalking, but certainly is a way that people are harassing other people through identity theft. With regards to cyber stalking, there is cyber stalking, cyberbullying. Basically, it's just online harassment that's unwanted and repeated behavior. And cyberbullying typically refers to minors under the age of 18, and cyber stalking typically refers to adults. Cyberbullying is certainly the more commonly known phrase, but there's just that tiny slight differentiation. The behavior itself is actually exactly the same. It's just one is for referencing minors and the other is for referencing adults. And that's kind of where that is. Now, I obviously don't necessarily need to go over any like in-depth stuff, I don't think, with like the types of stalking. And I certainly like want to open up the floor. Wes, like if you're interested in joining, you can. If anyone else like wants to join, I've like unlocked the seats. In next week's episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about the types of stalkers. I'm going to actually share this real quick in the chat box. Chris talking about spoofing one's phone, calling police. Yes, that's really sad. I'm going to scroll up through the chat box because I'm thinking that Chris added some more to that. She has a friend that was attacked with swatting by some hackers before. Oh, Chris, I'm so sorry to hear that for your friend. The spoofing, so frustrating and so incredibly easy to do, unfortunately. And spoofing is one of the tools a cyber stalker may use that I was going to talk about in February because it is all too easy to have happen. To notify Chris, no makeup on yet? Okay, well, if you put on makeup and you'd like to join, feel free. Anyone else like want to hop on to chat about this a little bit more? Oh, Chris, you're in Wisconsin, I see too. Ah, Wes is going to join us and Evie, so I'm gonna let you both in here. Wes, yours is saying right now that we have poor internet signals, so maybe it will come up here in just a moment. Evie, I've accepted. Oh, there you are, pink hair and all.
Woo! Hey, major feedback on you, Wes.
Yeah, Wes, yours is having some feedback. I'm gonna.
Sorry, internet. I will never do that again. I promise.
So we can hear you at least. Will you talk again for a moment, Wes?
Yes, and I've been testing this camera all day in different browsers, and there's something wrong here with my Windows update or something. I don't know.
Do you have headphones on, or are you on speaker?
You know what? Is that set got unplugged? That's what.
That might help with some of the feedback.
Oh, dear me, yes. My apologies. I'm new here.
Hey, that's okay. You know what? This is only my fourth time that I've either been on a Blab or not, and I've had really patient and fantastic teachers, so I'm happy to help out. Now, one thing that someone helped me with one of the first times that maybe I'll help. Whoa, now he disappeared. Maybe he can still hear us. Oh, here we go. He's coming back.
That wasn't me.
That wasn't you? That was your internet. You broke the internet, Wes.
I killed the wrong tab. Okay.
What browser are you using, Wes?
I'm in Chrome now.
Okay, so this helped me once before when I was having webcam issues. Actually, no, I think I was having video or audio issues. In your browser window, at the end of the URL where it says Blab IM and then the 50 million
God,
things.
there it is. There's a camera there.
Yes. And in my case, I had to tell it,
Okay.
I can't remember if it was audio or video that I had problems with, but nonetheless, I had to fix my settings there, and then everything's been fine since then. So I don't know if that'll help, but it may be worth checking out.
Well, you see the box comes up. It says, this page is accessing your microphone. Continue allowing a Blab to access your microphone, or always block mic access. And that's the only option, nothing to do with video.
Oh, interesting.
Then in the drop-down box, you can choose communications and done. And that's about it.
And I presume your
It goes nowhere.
computer has a webcam?
Yeah, it's built in, and it was working yesterday, so I didn't mean for that to become an issue because I am working on that. But the reason...
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm enjoying the whole dynamic of Blab. It's really awesome. It's going to be good for my business and different aspects of bottlenecks in my business I've been struggling with over the years. And yeah, it's really amazing. I love it.
Good. Now, did you want to talk a little bit about NLP with regards to cyberstalking and online harassment?
Sure. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It's not uncommonly known on the web as just insidious body language, the more subtle aspects of manipulation in general.
And how does it play into online harassment from from the harassing person's standpoint?
Okay, I was going to point out for one that harassment can exist in what's not said as much as what is.
Right.
Okay, that was kind of my branch off point right there, was that you can start a conversation with someone, that you can be drawn into a conversation and that person will suddenly express a different type of interest, or that person will suddenly show their, some other motive. And at that point, you have the choice whether to drop that relationship, be it a business one or personal, and the choice whether to, appreciate it as something genuine. I don't know. What I mean is, online manipulation can come in many forms, and some of them you don't even see. Right, the onlooker doesn't see until it's in their face.
Right, or until it's quote unquote too late.
Oh yeah. And
I would certainly agree with that.
And part of the reason that I have a perspective on this is because I'm in largely a women's field, which is polymer clay work. Okay, it's probably 85% women, and I run the risk, obviously, of becoming the instant troll the minute I look into their photos or whatever. Just trying to see what it is they do. You're already entering a PR matrix. You see, like if you're, I'm seeing that. I mean, what I can say is that I see the sexist angle of the whole thing quite objectively, more than most men would. Maybe that's what I mean.
Well, that's probably a really good thing, considering that your client base is 85% women, and
that's why I tweeted it, because that's my crowd.
Right.
So yeah, because part of it today was my tip of the day is this Twitter cleanup tool, and I think the ladies should have a look at that for certain.
Do you want to put that into the chat box, that resource? Chris.
I actually.
Go ahead.
I actually wrote it down, and you'll get it. It's manageflitter.com.
Oh yes, ManageFlitter. Yes, I know exactly what you're talking. How do you feel that ManageFlitter helps with eliminating some of the harassment, though? I'd be interested on what you think on that.
I'm sorry, I'm off for a moment. Thank you very much. It's great to meet you, Michelle, and hello, Evie. Have a great day.
Okay, great. Thanks. Chris shared in the chat box a resource from Krebs Security, which, by the way, is a pretty decent website with some stuff with regards to online harassment and stuff. I haven't specifically looked at their tag on swatting, but I have looked at their site before, and it might be one of the resources I have listed on my website. I'm not 100% sure, but he definitely has some useful articles out there with regards to some of the different aspects of online harassment and self-protection. Evie, welcome. I can't hear you.
That's right.
I can see your lips moving.
Because I was typing and I didn't want that to disturb you.
And you are a loud typer. Now we can hear you.
I started typing. I was like, oh no, they can probably hear that. Well,
Cliff, real quick, Evie, I just want to welcome the last couple people who hopped in. Joanne, welcome. Cliff, welcome. Anyone else that I've possibly overlooked, I apologize.
I had to wait on.
Oh, hang on. We have another person who hopped in here. I'm Zag. All right.
Yeah, yes, the video problems will be ongoing till I reboot and all that. But I didn't want to leave loose ends there. I had to get the door, and I came back just to make sure I didn't, throw a big bone out there and not watch what happened.
No, that's okay. And Chris and I each put the ManageFlitter resource in the chat box too.
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy that, I'm sure, because the more that we concentrate on our core people and stuff, the more we have to really watch out that we're not carrying along a bunch of garbage, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that was my point, and have a great show. It's again, it's good to have you on here.
Great. Thank you for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Evie, okay, sorry, back to you. I like that about Blab, just things like very fluid.
Yeah, Blab's incredible. I had to stay away from Blab. I should be packing for San Francisco right now as we speak. So, because my flight leaves at 6:19 in the morning or something, and I haven't packed.
Holy cow. Well, then I even appreciate you here.
Yeah, I saw the post on Facebook, and I wanted to support you because this is important to me because of how much I love you, Michelle. It just breaks my heart to see this continuing and nothing being done about it other than what you're trying to get done. So, whatever I can do to make this even more aware to, the Blab or Periscope world, because a lot of people on here. Yeah, it was Go Rise Girl. She runs Perry Girls. She's the founder of Perry Girls, the group, the ladies group that I told you about. And she's going to be in San Francisco.
Ah, yes, I remember that.
But I just don't think enough people realize that this can happen to anybody, kind of thing. You did nothing but go on a date, basically.
I didn't even go on a date. I just talked to someone on Twitter.
So, and now, your life is forever changed.
Yeah, definitely. I joke around with the $13,000 that I've paid in attorney's fees that has become a $13,000 education.
Yeah, it's not just the money; it's the mental toll that it's had on you, and the physical toll that it's had on you. And it just breaks my heart to see this happen to somebody that's such a good person, And I hope that people pay more attention to this message that you're trying to get out there to help other people, And I don't know, it just breaks my heart.
Don't make me cry. Well, don't make me cry. I cried last week. I want to try to make this a weekly thing.
All right, so you had said something like the difference between cyberbullying and cyberstalking. Did you go over that already, or did I?
Yeah, that's it's the cyberbullying is a term used for minors under the age of 18. Cyberstalking is the term for adults.
The same thing.
Cyberbullying,
depending on the age.
Yes. Yep. Same thing, just different terminology. Cyberbullying is the phrase that's probably more commonly known, and so a lot of times people do use them interchangeably, and just doesn't really make a difference just based on the person's age is really the only differentiation.
I know you've gone through a lot, but how can somebody protect themselves? I mean, is there anything you can proactively do other than not be on the internet?
That's a really great question. And I got the rough draft of my book back last night. And I know, really exciting. And I'm pleased with the progress so far. A lot of it, in my case, has definitely been going on the defense and putting a lot of time in after something happens to figure out, well, how did she do this? Like, for example, in 2013, when she tweeted me the make, model, and color of my car, my immediate thought was, how the fuck did she figure this out? Because most of us wouldn't necessarily know how to figure out the make, model, and color of someone's vehicle. And so part of the challenge for me is reframing how I do Google searches, because I don't typically do Google searches with the thought of how am I going to make someone's life difficult. Where in her case, she's certainly doing Google searches with the intent of disrupting and attempting to destroy lives. And so sometimes my Google search results don't really give me what I want. And so I just keep tweaking to figure out, like, oh, how did this happen? So with regards to the vehicle information, could she necessarily do something harmful to me with my vehicle information? I don't think so. However, I mentioned last week, and I'll mention again because this is a very, very real thing at the top of my mind, because I'm constantly on edge on when she may possibly, quote unquote, show up at my door. Do I want her to know the make, model, and color of the vehicle I drive? Absolutely not, because that would be visual indication that possibly I'm at home if she were to show up at my house with the intent of harming me. So I don't necessarily want that information out in the world, but other than that, is there really anything she could do? I don't think so. So with that particular example, part of what I ended up figuring out, I thought she figured out, because apparently Progressive Insurance, you can use their online code system, which is super helpful if you're looking to get insurance. However, any Joe Schmo can go to Progressive's website and they can say they're requesting an online quote, and Progressive keeps track of all vehicles registered at a specific address. In the case of an apartment building, it's obviously a little bit more challenging to figure out, well, whose vehicle belongs to who. But in the case of where I lived at in Florida before, because I had a very specific address, it just threw the information right up there on the screen, and the person didn't even have to say they were me. You could do it yourself. So that part's a little scary. And at one point, because I literally thought that's how she figured my information out as far as my vehicle information, I did a blog post about it at some point, and I mentioned like she figured it out, and I wasn't sure how, because I didn't put in there about the Progressive thing. And in her blog comment, she actually corrects me, if that's the right phrase, and says that she found out the make, model, and color of my car from Google Earth. Like, that's even a little bit more freaky that she figured it out from Google Earth, because it's for my property that I own back in Wisconsin, and that's actually a 4-family apartment unit. And how did she figure out, again, that my vehicle was the blue Prius? I have absolutely no idea. But the fact remains that she told me herself in a blog comment that she figured out my vehicle information from Google Earth. So there's all...
I was going to say that's pretty scary, because I don't know when it was, and I'm looking through my email right now. I got a bunch of quotes from a whole bunch of different insurance companies for my car, and I didn't request them.
Really? That's interesting.
As a matter of fact, just when I filed it under possible stalker, but I can't find the emails now to find out when it was. And when I called back all the insurance companies, they all said that they were going to investigate it, except for Progressive. And that's the minute that I left them. Yeah.
Really? But the thing is, with Progressive, you don't have to have insurance through Progressive in order for your information to show up. The vehicle registrations, at least in the state of Florida, I'm not going to attest to know anything for any other state, but in the state of Florida, it's public record where a vehicle is registered. And so in the case of Progressive, even if the person doesn't have Progressive as their insurance carrier, because they're publishing publicly available records for the state, that's why it's showing up. Because at the time, I didn't have Progressive insurance. I had Geico. Now I actually do coincidentally have Progressive as my insurance company, although I probably shouldn't say that, because I know she's going to watch this replay later, and God only knows what she's going to try to do with that information. Maybe I'll be changing insurance companies later. So a lot of the vulnerabilities that we have as humans aren't even necessarily things that we can control. Now, of course, we could get a P.O. box. I don't know if you're allowed to register a vehicle to a P.O. box. There's probably some law against that. I have no idea. But there's a certain amount of things like the Google Earth images. Like, we don't have control over that happening. And someone inadvertently getting our information. There's certain things, obviously, we can control.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I found the folder. It was in September 2014 when all this happened. So now I was not personally shopping for insurance. That's why I was like, why am I getting all these quotes? I was fine.
Yeah, that's really,
I will say that I am my name's different on the internet than it is in real life. I mean, you know me as my internet name, because I met you through the internet. But
Yep, exactly. But I do, now that we've known each other for a while, I do know your real name, which I won't reveal.
I purposefully did that, 15 years ago, so people can't find me. So that's a possible solution for people, going forward, just to use a different name. So, I mean, it is my name, but it's not. But there are no addresses attached to this.
Right.
You have to know my real name to get an address and stuff like that. So, all right. Well, yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I need to go though, so I can pack and wash this out of my hair.
Yes, go pack, because I know you're 3 hours ahead of me.
I will tune in and support you in the future. I'm sorry I didn't see the post from last week, so I wasn't here for your first show, but I will definitely be here in the future. And I miss you and I love you. Happy late birthday.
Miss you too. Thank you. Durham Skywriter. I see your question in the box, and in just a moment here, I'm going to scroll through a little bit in order to see what I've missed in the chat box as Evie and I were talking. You asked how she essentially found me, is the short version of the parts you asked in the question. And I talked a little bit about that on last week's episode. And essentially what happened is a woman, a 53-year-old woman or early 50s-year-old woman, was dating a friend of mine, and she saw me talking to him on Twitter. And something clicked in her mind, something happened, and she perceived me as some type of threat, I guess you could say. And that was back in 2012. And she has been stuck to me like Velcro ever since. The last time I heard from her was right before Thanksgiving. So that silence doesn't necessarily mean that she's gone, just means that she's not harassing me at the moment. But I still conduct myself online as though she's watching everything that I say and do. But no, I've never actually met her. If she showed up at my front door, I may or may not know who she is, because I have seen some pictures of her that she posted on various accounts that were harassing me, which again is kind of funny if you think about it, because if she's not her when she's harassing me, I don't know how she'd possibly have these photos of the real person harassing me, which is her. All right, so let me scroll through comments. I hope that answers your question, and if not, let me know. Welcome, Robin, and let's see who else we have that just hopped on. Dray, welcome. And EDCEDN. I'm actually confused if it's EDC or EDN, but in either case, to both of those, welcome. And let's see, I'm going to scroll down here. So in the chat box, for those of you who may not be following along in the chat box, Chris, Cyber 06, Cyber something. She has a little note on following Tim Burrows 1266 for comments on cyberstalking and cyberbullying. So for those of you who are interested in that, she's listed someone there who's also apparently a proponent for trying to stop this. Tommy gave a shout out to Wisconsin. I think that's directed to Chris. Chris mentions, I had someone picking up my insurance quote years ago, having all of my information, and they admitted some woman who doesn't look like me asked for it, pretending to be me. But I think they assumed she was me and accidentally gave her the info. Oh, that's really crazy, Chris. So what was the outcome of that? Do you know why that person was trying to get your insurance information? Did you ever find out? And if you have your makeup on, you're welcome to hop on if you have your makeup on now. Dray mentions she's also gone through cyberbullying. It was a nightmare. She hired a digital strategist to teach her how to build a personal brand online. If you don't define yourself online, you risk being defined by others. Incredibly true. And part of what happens with people engaging in online harassment is they can, and some of them often will. My person has done it, but not very much. But they basically assume your identity and send out messages to people under your identity, trying to do whatever they're doing with discrediting you, damaging your business or anything like that. My cyberstalker has created accounts in my son's name, and he was under the age of 18, which is really freaky when a Twitter account in your son's name is like tweeting you, and you know darn well like it's not obviously you or your son, little freaky. And that definitely, I think all of us that have brands, even if we're just ourselves, like we need to be incredibly, incredibly diligent on what's being said out there in regards to our name or our company name. In my case, my person created a number of profiles like with my name spelled backwards. And when Google alerts, they're kind of like dying off. But there was TalkWalker alerts for a while and stuff. And I put in those backwards spellings of my names to be notified if stuff was coming up. When I do Google searches on myself, I also do Google searches on my name spelled backwards, since she's already used that as like one of her tactics with her harassment. So that's something to keep in mind too. Like if you have variations and you're doing Google searches, like make sure you like do like those variations as well in your searches. Dray also shares a link to a video interview that she did with some tips. Thank you so much, Dray. Are you okay? I'll watch it after the show tonight, but are you okay if I possibly include that on my resources page on my website? Robin has a fantastic tip, and I think I mentioned it in a blog post about being safer on Facebook too. If you're on Facebook, make sure your friends list is not visible to everyone. In my case with my cyberstalker, that's how she started infiltrating my network, because she started sending friend requests to people that she saw on my friends list. My friends list is now hidden. Only I can see my friends list, and I think it might show like mutual friends. But what happened is some of my friends like accidentally accepted her friend request because it appeared to be legitimate. Another friend realized that it was my cyberstalker because Crazy Pants had posted a photo of the guy in question on her timeline, and my friend recognized him, and she's like, hey, like this is like your cyberstalker's on Facebook now. And it wasn't the cyberstalker was on Facebook now. She had actually been on Facebook for a while, but I didn't realize it until months and months later. So Robin's suggestion is a fantastic one. It's not under settings either. You actually have to click on your friends list, and I think that things are under there. If you don't know how to do it, let me know. I'd be more than happy to record a video and upload it out on YouTube for those of you who may not know how to do it. Okay, maybe I take that back. Maybe I won't, because in the process of recording the video, she'd actually, or people would be able to see like my friends, and I don't want to do that. I'd be happy to help though if someone needs help. We can hop on a screen share or something like that. Dray, thank you for giving permission that I can use your video on my resources page. Chris also includes a resource for reporting to the FBI for harassing and cyberstalking, report to social media platform. Yes, and for those of you who haven't reported to social media platforms, or maybe you have and you've been less than happy with the results, I still think that it's absolutely worth reporting, even if the social media network doesn't take action, because unless we unite, and it's kind of like, let's see, like what would be a good example? It's kind of like seeing like someone broken down on the side of the road and thinking like, oh, someone else will come along and they'll help that person. Like, how do we know someone else is going to come along and help that person? And even if like 10 people stop, like 10 people is like better than just one. And so unless we, like as internet citizens, like take responsibility and take a little bit of extra time to report bad behavior, the social networks aren't going to like know that it's actually an issue, and nothing can happen unless we actually ask them to do something. So definitely like take the time to report it, even if they decide not to do anything.
Hi.
Dray, welcome. Want to talk? Okay, we can hear you. It's really nice to meet you
too. Yeah, this is like literally my first day on Blab, so.
Well, welcome. Seems like you're doing just fine.
I think it's really great what you guys are talking about. Yeah, it's a serious issue.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience? Or are you not comfortable? I don't want you to like talk about anything that you're not comfortable with, because I know obviously like things can happen and stuff like that.
That's fine. Yeah, so my situation was that I had a former coworker, about a year after I had left the organization, a former coworker just decided to start posting all this stuff on the internet about me, and used all the free platforms like the social media sites, the free WordPress site, the free blogger sites, some forums. I mean, there were hundreds of websites and blogs and stuff like that, and they did all the variations like what you were talking about, all the different variations to my name, and just started opening up like site after site after site. And they, for example, they do like Dray Carson, but they'd spell it a little differently, or Andrea Carson, and they spell it a little bit differently, .wordpress.com, and they'd post one post, and then they'd open a whole new blog, and they'd post another post. And it was like, the post was just really like, it was just information that it obviously wasn't true. It was saying that I was a prostitute, that I ran a sex trafficking circle, because I'm an advocate against human trafficking. I have a business that actually, we create bags. One of my businesses is we create bags for girls that have been rescued from human trafficking. So they were taking all of what I'm an advocate against and spinning it and saying that I was actually part of it. I mean, it was just horrible stuff. They had pictures of my family on there. They had pictures that weren't really me, but had like maybe the backside like this, so you couldn't really see my face. I mean, it wasn't me, you could see the person's face. Right. It was like in all these positions, and they had people like doing testimonials about how like great I am in bed, just horrible stuff. And so I had no online presence at that time. I just had like a Facebook account, but I wasn't active, and I had no blog. I had really nothing. And so whatever was put out there was what was on the internet for me. So if you just did like a search of my name, it was horrible. So I had to do a lot of research on this. I had a friend, a good personal friend of mine that's one of the top internet law attorneys here in Arizona, where I'm from, in Arizona. And he said, look, I can tell you, you can either spend your money with me, and I can shut down this IP address, because if you don't know who the person is, because I couldn't prove it was him, it was coming from the country. It was actually coming from India. So he said, we can either shut down the IP address, but the reality is that that person can go next door, new IP address, and do this all over again. Or you could take your money and you can invest it and hire a digital strategist and actually brand yourself online. And I like thought he was crazy. I'm like, well, I can brand companies. I do marketing for companies. I can do that, but myself, like, who am I? He said, well, now you need to define who you are. And so that was like a whole interesting process of going through. So in conjunction with sending messages to every single blog that I had like I filed a police report. I had that police report information, and then combined it with like just a letter, a generic letter, referencing their like whatever websites, rules and regulations for shutting down fraudulent sites. I mentioned that it was these were variations of my name. They aren't me. I kind of lucked out because it was a domain that the domain itself was portions of my name. Even though they weren't acting as if they were me, they were the URL I could get shut down because it was close enough to my name that it was like misleading, I said. And I had to post like every single day. I reported it. Like I reported it every single day. And in that report, I listed every other like website that was connected to that same company. Like if it was WordPress, like there were like 15 different WordPress sites. So my hope was that all it took was one person to review it and they would shut down all of them. And that's like what started happening. But there are some sites out there that I just can't shut down. I mean, their domain is maybe over in Europe, and European internet law is different than the United States. So it's all you can do is just push out positive content on yourself. I mean, I didn't know who my stalker was. You seem to know who your stalker is, but I couldn't prove it. I couldn't prove it. But that was it.
Did you?
Well, no, I mean that was it. You know, I just think I'm a grown woman. I'm a grown adult, right? But this is what our teenagers, you know, deal with, and it just breaks my heart because when we were younger, you know, you had a bully, they had to show their face. They had to, like, you know, you knew who your bully was. You know, now because of the internet, your bully can be your best friend and you don't even know it. That's maybe jealous or upset, and they can create this whole world. And because these platforms are all just, you know, a content platform, they're not regulating the content. It's very, very hard to shut down. Very hard to shut down things like this.
Right.
Right.
Now, question for you.
With your person, did you have suspicions on who maybe it was?
I did after 2 months of it. Yeah. Because I set Google alerts so that anytime some variation of my name was posted, I would get an alert. And so
now, was that person? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would get an alert from Google saying there's, you know, this name was used in this post. So I started finding, and then I do searches like what you were saying. I do searches on myself like daily. And when I would read the content, I started understanding, because bullies, like, you know, you can tell if there's like a personal connection or if they're just trying to like get a rise out of you, or if it's vindictive or what it is. And so I started understanding the nature of what it is that they were saying and things that they were referencing, and it gave me a pretty good idea of where it was coming from. And then ultimately, it wasn't until everything was shut down that I was able to, I lucked out. I found a forum that when I clicked contact for technical, like, you know, if there's a technical difficulty, like down at the bottom, there's a contact thing. Proxy server that came up in the URL had this company's name embedded in it. And so I called the owner of the company. I said, hey, great news. You know, I know that this is coming from inside your organization. So, you know, you have the power to be able to shut this down. And so he actually helped me pinpoint who it was, fired the person from the company, but it was like a long process. I didn't even really know if I would ever be able to prove that it was him, and still to this day, like, I can't technically prove that it was him, but I know it was him.
Now, was he based in the US? Like, was this actually, or did this happen like overseas? I know you mentioned like they were using servers and stuff overseas, but was he physically like residing in the US and bouncing his stuff
At the time,
overseas?
I didn't know. Now I do know that he was in the United States when I met him, but at the time, I thought that he was still in the United States. I only recently found out, like a month or so ago, that he actually went back to India, and that made sense on why it was coming from there. But I thought that maybe he had just hired some you know, marketing company out there just to hound me. I mean, it sounded like a child English, you know. I could tell it wasn't even somebody, it just wasn't intelligent, like there was no intelligent, like they weren't saying anything really with substance. So I could tell that it was someone where English wasn't their first language, and that it was, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think in the case like with my person, like even though she's used over 100 different aliases with contacting me, I can tell that they're her because I have read mountains and mountains of communication from her, anywhere from tweets to 13-page documents that she sends through my website contact form. And I I've read so much that I can tell, like, oh, she might say her name is Jill, but I really know it's actually her because, like, the grammatical, like, nuances and stuff, like the linguistic section of it, like, it all obviously is coming from the same person. And I had actually contacted a forensic linguist in the UK to hire them. And then I ended up finding out, and my only experience with forensic linguists is watching Criminal Minds.
Right. So, which I love.
Because one of their characters, she was a forensic linguist. So I thought, well, I need to find a forensic linguist. And so I reached out to this organization, and apparently what forensic linguists do, which is a little deceiving on Criminal Minds, they actually can tell you if the writings are from the same person. What I was actually looking for, and this is where Criminal Minds was a little deceiving, and not in a bad way, is I know who they are from. Like, I know that part. I know it's all written by the same person. What I want to know is what's the psychological motivating factors behind her behavior. What does she want from me? Because I don't. I have 3 years in with this woman. It's kind of like my longest relationship, and I'm not benefiting from this at all. It's very one-sided. But I want to know, like, what is like her motivation? Like, what does she truly want from me? Does she want money? Is it a thing of power? Is she possibly going to harm me? I don't know. And so forensic linguists don't do that part. You actually need a forensic psychologist. So I'm trying very patiently to wait because they referred me to a forensic psychologist. I have absolutely no idea how much it's going to cost me to have this person give her assessment. I did outline in our email correspondence what I'm hoping her assessment does include for me. But I'm just kind of like patiently waiting. It's been a little bit, actually, I think I've been like 2 months into this process, and I'm really eager to find out like what this forensic insight will give me, and how I would have changed what I've done to date had I had this information before. And it, you said something before, Dray, that like I immediately latched onto, and you said I was lucky. And like we do sometimes like get these little like tiny victories, I guess we could say. But I hate that people like, and I hate using the word victims because I don't like to look at myself as a victim and stuff, but like the truth remains, like essentially that's what we are, we're victims. And it sucks that victims have to say like, I got lucky. Like, why do we have to be quote unquote lucky? This shit shouldn't be in our life to begin with.
Yeah.
So for us to like say that, like one, I think like it's a testament to your, like the fact that like that you've moved, like, I don't want to say past it because I don't know necessarily that that's the case, but that you were like determined to like figure out a way through this, whether it was unpleasant or not, which I think all types of online harassment are. But that you're like, you know what? Like I was lucky, like this little thing, like I shouldn't have to use this word lucky, but I recognize this for what it is. And I think that's really awesome that you looked at it kind of like in that perspective, as sucky as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's hard to know how to react and if you even should, because part of what the satisfaction is you reacting. They're getting what they want. They're getting the satisfaction and knowing that they're making you uncomfortable. And so it's like, how do you, but you can't ignore it, because then you're feeling like you can't fight. You have to be able to fight back and feel like you're creating breathing room for yourself and you feel protected or whatever. But at the same time, it's like it kind of just puts fuel on their fire. And so I don't know. It's a hard place to be in because you don't know really what to do. And even all the forensics, psychiatrists, psychologists, linguistic, whatever, you still don't know, like they're just going to give you information, but then what? Like, so you have all that information, but then what would you do? How are you going to, what are you going to do with it? You know, for yourself, for your own self. And so you're kind of like, you know, because I tell people all the time, look, I know so much about this. If I was to meet someone and not like them, I know within like an hour and a half, I could just ruin them online, just ruin them online. You know, it's so easy to do. It's so easy to do. So that's why, like, be proactive. If you don't have like something saying this is who you are, and you're not putting content out there on the web, and you know, you're kind of like in a really vulnerable situation. And this is happening to so many people.
Right.
It's happening to so many people, and I really don't know. I mean, there's cyberbullying. Like when I was researching online to find out what to do for cyberbullying, it was like incredibly ridiculous, the lack of
it is. It's some of it, you know, even like with my case, like when I took it to the police, I don't mean to sound like snotty when I say this, but I say this like just to illustrate how little some law enforcement agencies are prepared to deal with this. The detective assigned to my case, not on Facebook, not on Twitter. And he says to me, he says, why don't you just go offline? And I said, I own an online business. Like, it's not realistic. And not only that, I'm an American, and we have a lot of liberties over here in the United States. And part of that is I have the right to make a living and to feed my child and to make money. And if you want to tell me, oh, just go offline, and he was a nice detective, don't get me wrong, but that's not realistic for some of us. And I was listening. Oh, what was I listening to? Oh, I was on a webinar on Monday night. And the host of that particular webinar was talking about the projections are that by the year 2020, 50% of the Americans are going to be freelancers. So if that projection is true, if 50% of the Americans are going to be freelancers, that means there's a huge amount of individuals whose lives and their livelihoods can be impacted. And we need tighter law enforcement, and not even so much like the law enforcement in my particular case. And I know we're like at the top of the hour, and I'm just going to like say this again for like the first time people, and I talked a teeny bit about it last week. I got a restraining order against my person because law enforcement told me to get a restraining order. And they said, once you get the restraining order, if she violates the restraining order, we can prosecute her on criminal charges. So I followed their advice. I went out, I hired an attorney. We went through, literally it took 364 days to find her in contempt of the order, but we did it. Like it wasn't easy and it wasn't cheap, but I did it because they told me, do this. Then a judge signs off on an order and says, refer this to prosecution. And no one in all of Spokane, Washington courthouse apparently knows how to handle this. I must be like the first person to ever file a case there for cyberstalking. And so my attorney had to find out, well, what do we do? Like a judge has signed off saying like, go criminal prosecution, but how does that happen? We ended up finding out that it has to happen. Someone in law enforcement has to refer it to prosecution. It sat on a new detective's desk from April until September. And finally in September, they come to me and say, you know what? Like, we're not going to dedicate our resources to this. And to say that I was devastated is an understatement, because at that point, I'm like $13,000 in doing what they tell me to do. I didn't go get a restraining order because I want to get a restraining order and like have huge portions of my like checking account like consumed by this. So I do what they tell me to do, and then they say, like, we're not going to do anything. And that, in my opinion, is a huge failing on behalf of Spokane, Washington. And I am certain that there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there in the United States that would share similar stories with us with the jurisdictions that their stuff is filed in. I don't by any means think my story is unique in any way, in that law enforcement says do this, and then law enforcement does nothing when it's back like in their bucket of tasks. And I find that like really frustrating for people such as you and I, and pisses me off. To be perfectly honest, it really pisses me off.
I know it is. I think they just don't know how to handle it too. There's so many other things going on online, like I mean, a lot of areas that aren't even regulated that they're trying to wrap their heads around, and ultimately they're gonna. I don't know. I tend to think sometimes local law enforcement will go for the low-hanging fruit because there's just so many things for them to deal with. I did not get really any support from local government at all, or local police, like at all. I had to, I just filed a report. So I had the number so that I could use that.
Right.
But they did not do anything at all. And then some of these platforms even just said, well, do you have a court order to remove this from online? And it's like, no, I don't have a court order, but it has a picture of my daughter. She's 7, and they're saying that I'm prostituting her. Can you take that down? It's illegal. Anyway, what they're saying. So it was just it's ridiculous, some of the stuff. And Tommy TRC asked, what their end game was. Their end game was just to get a rise out of me, like to harass me, just to see me squirm. They were actually trying to get back not just myself, but also some other people in the organization that I was very close with. So it was a personal thing. I mean, it wasn't, they didn't want money. They weren't trying to get me, well, he was trying to actually get me fired from a couple contracts that I had, because he started bringing in those people's names, those companies' names into these blogs. I mean, it was horrible. But other than that, it was just personal. So
that's so crazy.
Yeah. But anyway, I thank you so much for allowing me to join. I love what you're doing here. I'm following you now online, so I'd love to keep in touch with you. I have to go. I didn't even realize. I'm like, it's so easy to lose time in here, isn't it?
It is, because I was just looking. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 6:07, and I actually planned it for an hour tonight. Last week I planned it for 30 minutes, and I think we went 45. And tonight I planned for an hour, and I'm at an hour 7. However, definitely let's connect on Twitter, and let's see if there's like some ways I can help support you and stuff too. And if you ever want to be like a guest or chat here, I'm doing this every Wednesday, apparently at 5 p.m. East Pacific. I was going to say Eastern again. I came from Florida. This time change. You did fantastic, and welcome for your first Blab. I think you did fantastic.
All right. Well, see you guys.
Thanks, Dray.
Bye.
Okay, so we're a little bit after the hour. There's 2 resources I wanted to share. Actually, there's 3 things I wanted to share in the chat box. For those of you who are on for the entire time of Dray's story, where she was discussing how presumably an old coworker was creating tons and tons of websites and posting really horrible things about her. If you enjoy reading, I'm going to put a book into the chat box. It's called The Google Bomb. The author of that book, I'm actually friends with her now. I met her through my own story, but she won an $11 million judgment against a woman who had done something very, very similar to her, as what Dray was saying happened to her. Incredibly, she doesn't go into a lot of the details, into the specifics of things in her book, but it's an incredibly good book. Another one that is not specific to stalking or online harassment, but it's a book that I really feel that every woman in particular would benefit from reading. It's called The Gift of Fear, and it's by, I think it's Gavin DeBecker, I think is the name, and I'm putting that in there too. And the other thing is I'm going to, so next week, I'm grabbing a link here. Next week, I'm going to talk about the different types of stalkers. And for those of you who were on last week, we did talk a little bit about them because someone had asked in the audience about it. So next week, Wednesday, we'll be talking about the different types of stalkers. I just shared the link for next week's episode in the chat box. So if you want to subscribe, that'd be awesome. Share it out on Twitter, Facebook. I appreciate all the support and helping spread the word on things. And joining us here, I don't know your name, but I know that apparently you live in Florida. Oh, you must live in Miami, maybe.
Nice catch. Nice catch. Yeah. Nice catch. How do you know the 305?
I don't. I actually just hovered above your avatar at the top of the screen, and it says digital marketing consultant, event prof, and board member at Focus Miami, late night currency trader.
From 305, that's why. Okay.
No, what is the 305? Now I'm curious because I lived in Florida and I'm not sure what that reference is.
Well, it's the area code for the phones.
Oh, got it. I was 941, and apparently I didn't have any friends in Florida that were 305.
Or like Naples or something, no? Where's the 301?
941 is Sarasota, down by Tampa.
All right, 10-4. All right, cool.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I got lucky. You know, when the whole economy cracked and, you know, all that stuff in 2007, 2008, 2009, I left New York. I came down here and 305'd it, and turned out to be a business, a company, and an entire new industry. So that's what.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really.
Well, I am just in the process of like ending because I'm actually over my time. But maybe you and I can connect on Twitter and see like if you want to like join next week and stuff.
Yeah, 10-4, man. It's 305. You got it. Social media 305. I'm live as a wire.
Yep.
I do have something to say about what you were just talking about, though.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you want to do it next week, that's no problem.
I don't mind hanging on here for a few more minutes.
All right. So listen, I just came on at the exact last minute.
Yeah, you did come on right at the end. Yep.
Exact last minute. My whole thing, though, and the reason I definitely jumped on, one thing you were saying, I kind of feel myself. It's not just about that, you know, girls are dealing with this problem. Guys are dealing with it too.
Absolutely.
So granted, it's, you know, a women's show and the women.
No, it's not. No. My show is not just like for women. Like it's really to help anyone who's been harassed, whether it's parents who are trying to help their kids, men, women. So no, I'm not excluding guys at all.
Awesome. I mean, to be honest with you, anytime I've ever heard about it, my entire life, it's always women are dealing with this problem. And guess what? I'm dealing with this problem too. You know?
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's so unfair that the whole thing is, oh my God, they're dealing with this problem. But guess what? You know what? I'm fucked too. And guess what? I'm fucked because I won't do something I don't want to do. And that's pretty unfair.
No, it is. And you probably came on after I was mentioning to Dray that she had used the word like she was lucky, and how much I hate that people that are being harassed have to use that word lucky when we get like this teeny little breadcrumb of something thrown to us accidentally, like not even on purpose. And then we later are like, oh, we're lucky, you know, because of this, because like people such as yourself that are being harassed, you should never have to use that phrase because this like sucks. Did you want to, what's your first name, Mr. 305?
John.
What is it?
John.
John, okay. That's easy because I have a brother named John. Do you maybe, I'll put in the chat box my website address if you want to like send me a message through my contact form on there. And we can chat a little bit. Just FYI, I'm a bookkeeper by trade, so I'm in like crazy busy mode right now to get 1099s out for clients for the IRS by the 31st.
It's totally cool. At the end of the day, I love Blab. I love it. You know,
that's really, awesome because really if you want to come, I'll be here next Wednesday.
And I just happened to catch your show, and then you just happened to say something, and I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm totally joining in. You know, so listen, I'm social media 305 across the board. So if you want to send me a message, we'll link up elsewhere. Either way, I'm 305 everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want. Pick up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
All right. High five, girl. I'll talk to you next time.
All righty. Bye, John.
All right. 10-4. Ciao.
Bye. Okay, so for my last little people that are still here, I want to thank you so much for joining today. Sorry we went a little bit over schedule. I'll be doing this every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Chris, I want to give a special shout out to you because you've been like so awesome with like all the resources that you put in the chat box for people. I really, really appreciate that. And I hope you'll join us again. And if you have makeup on, you can hop on a seat. And let's see, who else? Other than that, Yusuf, I think, is here. And then Kirby, I think you just came on at the very end. And I hope you'll definitely join us again. And I really appreciate having you here. And again, thank you everyone who joined tonight. Love to have you subscribe to next week's show, and the replays and upcoming shows will always be listed out on my website. All right, have a great night. I'm gonna end now. Bye. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kirby.